I would like to announce that a quorum is present, the meeting is duly called, and the notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The following board members are in attendance: Dr. Buddy Botter, Ms. Allison Lasan, Catherine Sells, Sheila Taylor, Michelle Alcateb, Dr. Stacy Barker, and Jenny Prosnick. We will now convene into closed session as authorized by Texas Government Code Section 551, specifically 551.071, 072, 074, and 089. The time is 6 p.m.
good height for both of y'all?
Yeah.
Okay. And you'll just speak right into that. And everybody will stand up and go it with you. Okay? And I'll tell you a secret. If for some reason you're like, oh, you get up here and you're like, oh, what are the words? They'll be right up there on the screen or right up here on the screen. You don't have to, because I'm sure you got it memorized. But, sometimes people get up here and are like, oh, my gosh, these people are looking at, yeah. Yeah, so it's right there. So when they call you up, this is where you'll be. Okay? Y'all will be wonderful. That is a great question. I'm so glad you asked. You'll just stand right back here because Dr. Rapp.
We will now reconvene into open session. The time is 7:01 p.m. Before we move forward with our pledges, we would like to take this time to remember and honor the victims of September 11th. If you would please join us, Board Member Sheila Taylor will lead us in prayer.
Let us always remember this country's great loss. Please bow your heads. Dear Lord God, I come before you today with a prayer of thanksgiving, thanking you for this district, thanking you for each and every school, thanking you for each and every educator and administrator, thanking you for each and every student, thanking you for each and every family in our entire LISD community. I pray your blessings upon each and every stakeholder. I ask that you guide this board, our hands, our hearts, and our minds in always making the right decisions for kids, and that you watch over us as a board as we do the important work of this district this evening and this school year. All these things I ask in your name. Amen.
Students from Bridlewood STEM Academy will now lead us in our pledges. Tyler Wynn and Ellen Hewitt.
Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi, my name is Ellen Hewitt from Bridlewood Elementary School. Please stand and join me for the pledge to the Texas flag. I honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Oh, no, kids, stay right up here because we have some fun facts. Tyler is a fabulous fifth grade student at Bridlewood Elementary. He enjoys playing games outside with his friends, and he wants to be a pilot or a dentist when he grows up, or a flying dentist. How about that? Ms. Newdick is Tyler's favorite teacher because she's really nice, and she helped Tyler get to know the school a few years ago. And some fun facts about Miss Ellen. Ellen is a terrific third grade student at Bridlewood Elementary. She enjoys playing in the snow. I don't know how much of that you get to do around here. Going to big water parks. Ellen would like to be a teacher or a doctor that delivers babies when she grows up. Ms. Waldrop is Ellen's favorite teacher because she goes to Ellen's church and is also her Sunday school teacher. Join me in thanking these children for leading our pledges. Are there parents here? Could the parents stand so we can thank you for these amazing students? Come on. Good job. Welcome to all. The Lewisville ISD Board of Trustees meets monthly to receive reports from staff and take action on recommendations from the superintendent. The board receives the agenda and all supporting documentation 10 days in advance of these regular meetings, which allows us to ask and receive answers to many of our questions. The board also meets in regularly scheduled workshops and work sessions where staff discussions and presentations are given for many of the agenda items. This protocol means lengthy discussion or a litany of questions on every agenda item is often not necessary. And as a board, we should have appropriate knowledge and preparation for responses regarding the content of the meeting tonight. Next up will be our recognitions for the evening, which is always one of my favorite parts of the night. Before I turn it over to Chief Communications Officer Amanda Brim for this agenda item, I want to take a moment of privilege. September 11th is known as Patriot Day. On this day, we remember the people who made brave choices and showed great courage as our country was attacked. The United States is proudly known as the land of the free and the home of the brave. Let us remember these people who were brave 22 years ago and focus on how we can be brave and have courage as we make choices today. Schools across Lewisville ISD in the state of Texas read those words today, and I thought it was fitting for us to do it tonight. I heard them this morning at the Colony High School, where over 200 students in the City of the Colony Fire and Police participated in the 9/11 workout. It was inspiring to watch students encourage one another to finish strong and run alongside firefighters and police in the colony. I want to ask all the first responders who joined us here today to stand so we can appreciate you for all you do to keep our schools and our city safe, and then join us up here on the dais for a photograph. Show. I also want to point out that today kicks off Kindness Week in LISD. In case you've noticed the salmon shirts some of us are wearing today. In 2018, students from all 5 Lewisville high schools were determined to make kindness normal. That's where it all began. Today, hashtag LISDBeKind continues to play an important role in the district. I encourage everyone to be the one who is kind. It is fitting that we are recognizing several PTA groups on the first day of Kindness Week. As we all know, an involved and engaged PTA can make a huge impact on the climate of our campuses. LISD is a better district for that partnership. And with that, Ms. Brin, the floor is yours.
Lewisville ISD is happy to recognize the PTAs at Bluebonnet, Liberty, McAuliffe, Prairie Trail, and Timber Creek Elementary Schools, Briar Hill, Forestwood, and Lamar Middle Schools, and the Colony High School. The PTAs at these schools were recently named a National PTA School of Excellence. The School of Excellence program was designed to open the lines of communication and critical thinking within school communities to make data-driven decisions that yield positive, long-term results. The parent-teacher associations at these schools are committed to supporting students, teachers, and their communities, which ultimately ensures students have valuable learning experiences. LISD is grateful for the continued support of its PTAs. Congratulations.
My name is Lana Fisher, and I have the privilege of serving at Bluebonnet Elementary as its principal. And this is Elise Hauer, our PTA board president.
And we have with us here Kirsten Burbridge. She's our VP of Events. Jennifer Tenley, our VP of School Support. Jay Shiri Chidabaram, and her daughter. And she is our council delegate and our social media chair.
My name is Matt Rainey, and I am honored to be serving as the principal at Liberty Elementary. These wonderful people to my right, I have Mrs. Cox, our assistant principal, Mrs. Elizabeth Banda, our counselor, and then I have Mr. Matt Amadon. He is our watchdog coordinator, and I have our president, Mrs. Shannon Thompson.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Mattingly. I'm the principal at McAuliffe Elementary. I have our assistant principal, Mr. Caden Kirby, our school resource officer, Ben McKelvey, our vice president of communications, Casey Cohagen, and our PTA president, Jessica Estes.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Vaughn, and I'm excited to be the principal at Prairie Trail. I want to thank the school board and Dr. Rapp for their continued support of PTA. We couldn't do it without them. I have two fabulous people with me tonight, Melinda Woolley, who is our former PTA president, and Natalie Smith, who is our current PTA president. Thank y'all.
Good evening. I'm Amy Middleton, the proud principal at Timber Creek Elementary, and these fabulous ladies to my right are Jenny Rasco, our PTA president, Ashley Mulberger, who is our secretary, and just want to thank the board, not just for honoring us this evening, but also Dr. Rapp for modeling the importance of the relationship between PTA and our schools. Thanks so much. It's an honor.
Hello, I'm Tina Kroll. I'm the principal at Briar Hill, and I would like to also thank our school board and Dr. Rapp for all of your support and everything. And I would like to introduce our PTA president, Tony DeResca. We have Allison Lasan, who serves on our PTA as well, and Officer Harney, who is part of our PTA. So thank you guys for being here.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Hawes, principal at Forestwood Middle School. I would like to introduce my PTA president, Pam Cowan, who is going to introduce just a small portion of our amazing PTA board.
Good evening. I'm Pam Cowan. I've got Christina Whitlock, our socials chair, Debbie Dingus, our council representative, Stephanie Oldenkamp, our hospitality chair, Debbie Prue, our school supplies chair. Sorry, I should have studied this before I came. And Krina Shaw, our book fair chair, and our honorary former board member, Michelle Alcative.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm Christy Casal. I am the principal at Lamar Middle School. And thank you, Dr. Rapp. Thank you, Board, for including us in this recognition tonight and part of the agenda. So I have here with me, I have Miss Melinda Woolley, who did a very quick turnaround. You just saw her make an appearance for Prairie Trail, and now she's back in another shirt. So, and then I have Bethany Thornton with us as well, Melissa Nagengast on the end, and right there, second from the end, Christina Lawrence, our fabulous president.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tim Baxter, principal of the Colony High School. I also want to thank Dr. Rapp, our Board of Trustees, and our district leadership, all of your support always, and many of you that were at the school this morning for the 911 workout. That was super impactful. Tonight I have two of my board members here with me. I have our board president, Holly Shelton, and our vice president, Rebecca Chirinos, also both LISD administrators as well. So let's give them a round of applause.
The recognized someone will be presented by board member Allison Lasan.
Okay, we have two here. The first one, a student shared about Coach Cody at the Colony High School. Coach Cody is an amazing coach and trainer who consistently goes the extra mile to help students by taking interests in our lives, goals, and our personal struggles. His passion for leading is infectious and creates a supportive and motivating environment for students to feel comfortable asking questions and taking risks. My father passed away last year, and Coach Cody was there for me the entire time. I could not have made it throughout the year without him and his support. He is amazing. And then the second one, a staff member shared about Mrs. Honeycutt at the Student Success Center. Dina's flexibility and open-minded approach create an inclusive and supportive learning environment where every student feels valued and empowered. By continuously seeking to connect with her students on a personal level, she fosters a sense of belonging that greatly enhances their educational experience.
Thank you. And that is just a very small sampling of the recognized someones that go out across the district. Next up is a superintendent update. Dr. Rapp.
All right. Thank you, Madam President, Board. I'm pleased to provide you an update this month. It's one of my favorite things to do, to give you just a quick rundown about things going on around the school district. I do want to provide this update in the format, again, of just talking about those 3 C's that we focus on. I'll start first with connection with students. Our enrollment continues to climb, and we're at 48,297 students. And we recently got to celebrate Dr. Russell of Wellington Elementary, who's one of 3 elementary teachers across the state to be named a Texas Elementary Teacher of the Year finalist. And we will be excited for her to attend a banquet in October. And we're so proud of you, Dr. Russell. And we enjoyed surprising her in her classroom that morning. And then I'm looking forward to, of course, this fall getting our groups launched that we started last year, and we're continuing into this year and interacting with new faces and new parents and people in our community and school district. We had 140 people that are interested in Supper with the Superintendent for this year, so I'm excited to engage with them. We've got 90 people that will be brand ambassadors for this school year, and we have 40 people who filled out our application that went out not too long ago to be in our Key Communicators group. And of course, as part of Key Communicators, we also partner with our PTA, speaking of them, in terms of Rising Stars and their program and really merging those two things so that it's a collaborative effort. And then when it comes to connection with our community, Saturday I had the honor of going to the donation drive at Briar Hill Middle School, which was arranged for Love Packs. It was a collaborative effort with many groups, including Just Serve and many student groups from Briar Hill. But really, when I was there, what struck me too was just that the Briar Hill community, how much food they had donated in order to be packed up in boxes on that day. And it was a great day of service, a great way to lead into 9/11 this morning. And I'm just really proud of how our schools and our students and our communities come together to meet the needs of those around us. And then, as you all read, and we read Recognize Someone's Here every year, we've had 1,152 submissions since the school year began. And we're looking forward to surpassing our 3,000 mark from last school year. And I know that these are making a huge difference in the culture of our school district, and people being celebrated and recognized for what they do makes a huge difference. And then, as you all know, every month I report to you on how we're doing on the communication front. That's one of those other 3 C's we work on. And so the August wrap-up for staff, the August report for families, our open rates are still very strong. For the wrap-up and the report, the main clicks were that first day of school video and the Guardian program. And then our app, which we encourage everyone to download if they have not downloaded it yet. We have over 11,000 downloads, and compared to where we ended last year with 3,000. Of course, we had a soft launch at the end of last school year, but we know those numbers will continue to climb as we go throughout this year. I use it all the time. It's an easy way, this sounds like a commercial, to enter in an absence note, replenish that meal account, check out what's going on around the school district. I highly recommend it. And then we know that you all have called for November bond and Vader election. There are 7 propositions that are on that ballot, and we continue to communicate as one of our 3 C's about those propositions and the Vader election. And of course, your bond proposition breakdown, we know that over 78% of the bond projects are actually found in Proposition B, and that prop is $960 million, and that includes 20-year maintenance, life cycle, and repair projects for campuses, about $100 million in safety and security upgrades, and many other things. And we have live our website, lisdbond.com, with all of those details. It's important to note, and we'll continue to include this information in our communications, that in 2019 a law passed that requires school districts to include language on the ballot that this is a property tax increase. But as we've been communicating, in fact, if all 7 propositions are passed, our overall tax rate will be 10.6 cents less than it is now in 2023. And of course, as a board, we constantly commend you for your debt management policies that will allow no increase to the INS tax rate, and you all have saved the taxpayers millions of dollars in how you pay off the debt for the school district. So again, there's that website, lisdbond.com. October 10th is the deadline to register to vote. Early voting begins October 23rd, and Election Day is November 7th. The website has an FAQ section, and people can go there to submit a question, and we'll continue to build out the information in FAQs. And that is all I have for this evening.
Thank you. Public comment is next on the agenda. We had nobody sign up to participate in public comment, so we will move on to consent. Are there any items to be pulled, or would someone like to make a motion? Anybody want to make a motion? Dr. Bonner?
I move that the board approve the consent agenda items as recommended by administration.
Taylor seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous, 7-0. Next on the agenda are information items. Federal programs update. Ms. Cobb.
Good evening, Board, Ms. Prosnick, and committee. We are thrilled to introduce Dr. Hart and Ms. Rupert to share with you our federal programs update for the evening.
Madam President, Board, thank you so much for hearing us tonight. We're delighted to be here. And I think Ms. Maloney is going to start this evening.
As a part of the federal programs and federal funds that we receive, we wanted to draw your attention to that in the general fund that you adopted in August, there is a small portion of federal funds. And so this slide shows the portion of federal funds adopted within the general operating budget. And these funds are outside of the federal entitlements and include our impact aid, SHARS, JROTC, bond refunds for the Build Back America bonds, and the indirect costs from our federal grants.
So we're going to take a look here. You'll see in the first three columns, this is funding that comes to us through recurring educational legislation. So the ESSA grants, that's Title I, II, III, and IV. Idea B is providing support for students served by special education, and Carl Perkins is supporting our career and technical programs. So I just wanted to make a note about those first three. Funds for these grants are intended to supplement, right? So they're helping out, they're coming in with above and beyond services. And then you can see ESSER in that fourth column there. This is actually disaster grant money, right? So this is specifically related to COVID-19. So you'll see there, that ESSER number is pretty big, right? So normally we're a pretty small piece of the overall budget pie, and then for a little while, for a couple of exciting years, we were a larger piece of the pie there. I do just want to make a note there. You'll see ESSER 1 and 2 total is over $20 million, which is a substantial amount. It's just important to note that while we did receive those federal grant funds, we actually received less that very amount in state funding. So it was supplanted at the state level. So it's just important to note that our impact on that was zero. So just another thing to note here, you'll see that overall the ESSA, the Idea B, and the Carl Perkins, those remain somewhat flat across a 5-year period. And during that same 5-year period, we have seen an increase in student needs, and we've also seen I think we've all felt a meaningful increase to inflation. And so as those things have gone up, what we've not seen go up has been the federal funding. Just another note on that, staffing positions, of course, there's a lot of staffing positions funded through these federal grants because you really can't have anything more meaningful than an amazing teacher, right? So we pay for a lot of staffing positions through the grants. And what happens is, of course, we provide raises. Thank you very much, by the way, thank you, provide raises annually. And so what that does is the raises continue to increase. Well, what that does when the total amount of the grant stays flat over time is it leaves a small dwindling amount for other things provided with the grants, if that makes sense. So also with Idea B, of course, we have an ever increasing number of students who are receiving services under special education, and you'll see that number has not increased commensurate to our increases. And then just the last thing I want to point out on this slide is Carl Perkins. I know you've seen there are some unbelievable programs being provided in the district through Perkins, and the number you see there does not reflect the kind of funding it takes to put on those really unbelievable programs. So that's just a few things about these. And now I'm done with kind of the not so fun facts, and we're going to move on to the more fun facts about federal programs, what we're actually spending the funds on.
I get the fun piece of sharing. What do we spend our money on? So on Title I, we still have 27 campuses. We use the school-wide programs, and we deal with staffing, substantial tutoring at multiple Title I campuses that we have, materials, and definitely family involvement. Title II, that is our recruitment and retaining teachers. That is through our professional learning department. A lot of our money goes through professional learning, and then the other piece of it goes through mentors, mentoring our brand new coaches, mentoring our brand new teachers. So all our schools in our district are affected by this grant. Title III is our language acquisition grant. It helps with staffing and classroom supplies, but probably the fun piece that I always love to tell people is that we pay for NISA and SOAR. So the summer program for our students, and I love to go visit that, and I'm sure y'all enjoy it as well. Title IV is our well-rounded, safe, and healthy students. It helps with staffing. It also helps with the STEM campuses, pay for certification and training for our teachers. It also helps with supplies, definitely at the middle school level. We also help pay for the Second Step Elementary digital program this year, and we also helped with some classroom materials. Perkins, Dr. Hart mentioned Perkins and how we spend that money, and then Idea B is definitely for our special education programs.
Then for ESSER 3, so of course this funding came in 2 years ago. At the time we received it, it was specifically to help us close gaps that were caused by that COVID-19 pandemic. At the time that it came in, we developed a community-wide plan. We had input from over 5,000 people, and you can see here what that funding has gone to over the course of 2 years. I think probably, once again, the most meaningful impact, 138 LISD staff members. That first year, 108 the next year. Of course, we've paid for all of the House Bill 4545 tutoring, indirect costs, which that comes back into the district, which is helpful, and then, of course, reading academies, stipends, so for everyone who's on that learning journey, helping out with some stipends and some resources and materials for that. So all of those things were very helpful to help us close those gaps, and the needs right now do not look like they did, of course, on the first day of COVID-19, but they're not entirely gone. However, ESSER funding is. So at this time, these costs are being absorbed into the general fund. So that's just an important note. Another federal grant that we have is the T-Class grant. So Lewisville ISD is participating in 2 parts of the T-Class grant that are under the umbrella of expanding pathways to the classroom, right? So what we're really looking to do is bring more teachers into the profession. So let's look there at that first item, para stipends. So of course this is the T-class interns, I think is the word we started using for it last year. So this is where we have paraprofessionals who are working on their college degree and or their teaching certification, and this is just a financial piece to just help them get over that finish line. So we actually had 11 LISD employees who received this. There were 6 that were grant funded, and then of course after we did that there were 5 additional that were funded by the Board of Trustees. So thank you for that. That was a really meaningful thing that we did last year. So at the time, all of them were paraprofessionals. At this time, 6 are now in professional positions. 3 are associate teachers, which you know is that stepping stone on the way there. And then 2 are still paraprofessionals. So this grant program is actually finished in May of 2024. So they are working their way to being finished. So that's an exciting one. Then, of course, you can see item 2 there, the education and training program. So this is those courses at the high school for students who know that they want to be a teacher. So the purpose of the grant is to help us grow those programs, to increase access to students. So that has happened. This is a 2-year grant. We just finished year 1. We're beginning year 2. We do have, last year we had an increase in number of courses offered and number of students. This year, again, we have an increase in number of courses offered and number of students. So the funding provided is stipends for those teachers. And we're asking a lot of those teachers, they're coming together, they're meeting. We're really sort of building a whole network there, which is a lot of fun for us. It's also classroom materials and funding for professional learning. The third part of that is called a residency program. This is something we talked about a little bit last year. This is Decision Point 5. And it's a really cool idea where there would be student teaching is essentially over the course of a year instead of a semester, and we pay them, and funding was available through a grant, which sounded awesome, except that there were only 15 approved universities statewide, and not one of those universities had any students to send us, which made it difficult to spend the grant on it. So nothing came of that grant funding. However, silver lining, through those conversations, we ended up talking a lot with Dallas College, and they have a new program that they're working on where students are enrolled. They are full-time students, and they are full-time paraprofessional employees, and the goal is for them to get a college degree in 4 years, and then in 1 more year their teaching certification. So we've partnered with them on this, and we will be launching our first cohort in spring of 2024. So that's something that we are very excited about that came out of that. So that's a nice silver lining for that piece.
So those were our federal grants. This is our 3 state grants that we have going on currently. Our COVID health grant, one we talked about last year, it is completely closed. We spent 100% of those funds to help support the COVID call center, to buy air purifiers and supplies and cleaning supplies and PPE for the classrooms. The new grant that we have received is the School Safety Standards Formula Grant. This is to help us fulfill some of those current standards that have been set forth by the state that we have to fulfill for safety. So that's going to help pay for a small portion of that, with about $2 million there. And then our Silent Panic Alert Technology, which they're calling the SPAT grant, for a nice new fun word. That is to put a device in the teacher's classroom where they can directly dial to emergency services, and the LISD Safety and Security knows as well, but that's something that we can incorporate into our program.
And then lastly, it's just important to us to always sort of remember why we do what we do. We feel like LISD staff are the most amazing staff ever, and it's really a privilege every day to provide to them the opportunity to build those relationships with students. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Ms. Taylor.
My question is related to the Title I grants. I think you said 27 campuses. Was it $5 million in total, I guess?
It's a little bit over $5 million, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I was kind of calculating that in my CPA brain, $185,000 a campus. Do they have any restrictions on how they spend the money? Is every campus supposed to spend the money the same way? Do they have some leeway on a per campus basis on how they spend those funds?
So each campus receives funds based on the percentage of free and reduced students that they have and then the number that they have. So each campus actually receives a different amount.
Gotcha.
And
okay,
then,
that's
yes.
good to know.
And then based on federal guidelines, they have they're able to choose how they spend their money. And so some campuses, 100% goes to tutoring. Like all of it goes to paying for staff and also for buses. Some campuses pay for an extra para or an extra teacher, an extra staff member for their campus. So it is based on what their needs are specifically.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
That's my question.
Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you, ladies, very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the academic calendar of 2024-2025. We're already talking about it. Dr. Miller.
Good evening, Madam President and the board. So we come to start the conversation for the 24-25 academic calendar. As you know, the calendar development takes several months to create. It's a long process. So we start that in September. If you notice, this is kind of an overview of what the process looks like. If you notice in September last year, we did a survey to staff and to families. We had great responses to that. We still feel that that data is very useful, so we're going to use that again this year. And then in October, a new approach is once the calendar committee's created several options, more than what we vote for, so 5, 6, a good amount of options, then we're going to take it to some input committees to get some more input based on what does that look like once you have created that into a calendar. It is a big puzzle to put together a calendar. I promise you, Dr. Bonner, people don't understand just what kind of a puzzle it is to put together this calendar. And so we have choices in that, but along with choices comes other things that you can't do. So it's give or take. And then we will come back here in November with the options that we narrow down based on all the input and have a survey go out to the community in order to select our calendar for next year. So there are choices that we have in our calendar, and then there are things that we don't have choices on. So our state parameters, there are 3 of them. Because we are a district of innovation, we can start before the 4th Monday. We cannot end school before May 15th, and then we do not have instructional days we are trying to hit. We have minutes, and so every district's calendar can look very different in the number of days because it's based on instructional minutes. These are all the variables that we do have a choice in, but remember, when you choose one of these choices, it impacts something else. So these are the things that we will talk to all the different input groups about. These are the things that we had the survey give us data on, so we will use all of that input as we're looking at the different variables. And then these are the different groups that we either have input on or are getting input on to determine the variables that we will use to create our calendar. These are some of the things when I say give or take. So, your start date then impacts how the end of the first semester ends. If it's before the break or after the break, your balancing your number of semesters is impacted by that. There's lots of different things. There's a new one on here for this year, and Dr. Fitzhugh, correct me if I say this wrong, but based on new TEA attendance guidelines, half days impact CTE funding. So that is something that the calendar committee is going to look at, because we have worked over the past couple years of really trying to give staff some adequate time for work time and for professional learning. That could now impact our CTE funding. And so that's something we already have a couple things that we want to explore with them, but I don't know where that's going to land yet, what that will look like on our calendar. But that's definitely, when you look at the last bullet down here of trying to balance all the needs of staff and in our families, but also those factors of funding and other things that will impact the calendar. So we definitely, student learning and impact on students is the number one priority that whenever we create the calendar. And then there are other factors that we want to build into that as we build it. And then, of course, it seems like every year there's something that the calendar doesn't end up being pretty. So we always have to keep in mind that emergencies come up or things come up that can impact the calendar. So we will consider that as we create. So in the past, this is the input that the board has given us based on calendar preferences. So we look at these as we create the calendar. If y'all have any other preferences you'd like us to consider or any questions or input, we will be glad to take that.
Dr. Barker?
Thank you, Madam President. Just a quick question. Do we also have conversations with our surrounding districts about their calendar development and how that might either match up or conflict with ours?
Yes, we do talk with other districts. Everyone's kind of at their own timing. Some districts actually approve 2-year calendars at the same time. So yes, we talk to them on both sides, as well as universities as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Bronner?
I can't help myself. I'm so sorry. Great graphic, by the way.
Thank you.
Really like that. This summer was really hot out there. I don't know if you all noticed that or not. It was brutal. And so I just wonder if we could maybe get one option with a late start. And I know that is sacrilegious coming out of my mouth, but it was hot. And I know that it popped HVAC here and across the Metroplex. So if we could just one as a consideration, I sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Sells?
I just want to say thank you, and also thank you for continuing to put the prior input from the board. The board has spent a lot of time previously talking about this and discussing it. I just wanted to put out there that it is so important. Last year we had more responses to the survey than we've ever had, and it made our job easy because we felt like we knew what our community wanted. And so I just urge people, again, it is not too early to put on your calendar. In November, there's going to be a survey coming out. And guess what? If you don't take that survey, your voice is not heard and your voice is not impacted in how this board will vote on the calendar. So if you have a specific desire, you need to make your vote count. So thank you.
Ms. Alcatab?
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Have we been given information on how those committee groups are going to be formed?
No, but I can put that in board notes for you.
Okay, yeah, perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is that everything? The calendar is very popular. Next on the agenda is the accountability update. Dr. Fitzhugh.
Okay, I'm back again to talk about all of the things going on in the world of accountability. So we've talked a lot about some of the changes and some different pieces, but
The real truth is we have been talking about accountability since 2012. Since 2012, we've been discussing that the system is not adequate. It's based on a standardized system, a standardized test, that our students are more than a test score. We have invested in creating campus profiles. We have regularly scheduled student learning updates and presented them to the board. We have created our long-range plan and our scorecard based on all of the discussion over all of the years. We have valued and looked at all of the multiple measures that we have available and worked to create accountability within to report that out to our school board and our community. So as we go into the state's accountability, I just wanted us all to flash back on our time here in LISD and remember we have grown a lot and invested a lot in accountability. So TEA has proposed many changes that we have discussed up here at the board. We have submitted a lot of feedback about that. We have talked about CCMR cut points not being moved. We've talked about decreasing the student group size. We've sent in about graduation needing to be a larger portion. We've talked about the progress calculations and how important they are, but they're not going to be real impactful this year based on the system that's been developed. We've joined with 200 plus school districts in writing to our officials to discuss the changes that the commissioner is making to the CCMR accountability. To date, TEA has not adjusted or made any changes to their proposal. So as we talk about accountability, I think definitions are really important. And so Commissioner Morath has stated in his House testimony that House Bill 22 requires him to increase cut scores in a manner that reduces achievement gap and also ensures that Texas is a national leader in post-secondary success. What I think is interesting about that is 2 weeks after I listened to that testimony, maybe a little bit later, a news blurb popped up in my email. Texas is number 2 in the top 10 states that are America's best at producing the workers that employees want to hire. Now that's from CNBC, that's their study. So depending on what study you look at, we're doing a good job of having our students be ready to be employed. So here's the current proposal for CCMR. For our high schools, college career military readiness is 40% of Domain 1. It's also 30% of Domain 3. So previously, having 60% of your students at a college career military readiness would give you an A or a 90. Under this year's proposal, that is a D and a 67. Previously, a 48 would have given you a B, now it's a 62. And 26% would have been a D, now it's an F. Campuses have to have 88% of their students meeting college career military readiness indicators in order for the campus to receive an A. That's a really big change. The other piece that this comes with is that our current ratings are based on the class of 2022. They graduated a year ago. We couldn't do anything about that. Our ratings next year are based on the class of 2023. They're gone as well. There's nothing we can do. The current group of seniors that's graduating is the first that we can have some impact on because college career military readiness, especially that career readiness, is a pathway approach, is what it's moving to. TEA is truly moving the standard after the kids have gone. There is nothing that our districts can do at this point for those next 2 years' ratings. So one of the things that we look at, because we've talked a lot, is we look at what are surrounding people saying about accountability. So Raise Your Hand Texas, which is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, did a study called Measure What Matters. And what they found was that 83% of Texans polled felt that it's not appropriate to grade entirely based on STAR. 81% felt that it put undue pressure on students. And 69% of Texans do not believe STAR effectively measures what students are learning. We had several attempts this legislative session at trying to get accountability through that would impact these changes. None of those were successful, but I've listed some of them out there. So what we're asking for really is we want to expand the definition about what a good school is. We want something that goes beyond a STAR test. We want to look at preparedness, teacher quality, parent engagement. Those are all things that are part of our profile. We want to look at student performance beyond just 100% STAR and a multiple choice test. What are all the factors? We do so much more than just one standardized test a year. That is what we would like in an accountability system. And we want it to reflect a well-roundedness of what our schools do. We have a tremendous pressure on teachers and students right now with the standardized testing system, and so we're asking for them to look at a more robust approach. The truth is these ratings, for as much as we can stand up here and say that they don't measure what we want them to measure, they impact the way our community perceives us. They impact the way the teachers feel about the job they've done. And so it's critical that we are informed about it and ready to discuss the shortcomings, because they continue to change it and make it more and more difficult. And that is all.
Thank you, Dr. Fitzhugh. Any comments from the board? Ms. Taylor?
I just wanted to, I think what you said in your last comment was important about the community perception, because speaking as someone who wasn't on the board yet, as a parent, trying to decide where to send my child from elementary school to middle, and looking at, all I had to look at was the grades. I wasn't thinking, you know, what else does this school do? You know, what are some of the other things that I could rate it on? Most parents are looking at the test score. And if I see a school that's a C school or a D school, I'm wondering, how did we fail the kids? That's what I'm thinking as a parent. And I think we have to do something, right, to help with the community perception until we get this standard change, because it's all we have. Does that make sense? And if you're not sitting around the board table or you're not reviewing the campus profiles, that is all you have. And the perception is that we are leaving a community or a group of kids behind, because we have A schools over here, but we have C and D schools here. So I guess it's more of a comment, and how do we change the perception, even though we can't change what we have to measure. Does that make sense? So probably more of a comment.
Dr. Barker?
I'll just add to that. I think it is really important that our community understands what we have added to how we hold ourselves accountable beyond what the state is, how the state is holding us accountable. That our community understands that we measure more than just one test score. We have formative assessments throughout the year. We are monitoring that data regularly. We are holding those meetings with our staff to make sure that our students are where they need to be. And like you said, I think we need to continue to ensure that our community understands all of those pieces, because I work with a lot of districts, and not a lot of districts have the same kind of dedication to data that this district does in terms of within its long-range plan and its scorecard and its campus profiles. And that is something to be absolutely commended, and we need to continue to hold that at the forefront of this is how we hold ourselves accountable, regardless of what the state says.
My comments are, this is beyond autopsy reporting, because we're looking at students that were 2-3 years ago, and we're not even going to be able to see the impact on our current seniors. All we are graded on in our elementaries is STAR. That's it. And I would say that having been in many of our elementaries and seeing the small group learning, and I was at DeGan the other day where they celebrated the growth of students in their scores on iStation. It was growth. It wasn't about who had the highest score. It was about who had the largest growth. And I think that it is very short-sighted of the commissioner and of TEA. And I'm going to ask a question. I'm pretty sure you know the answer to this. But if every one of our graduates this year went to Harvard, how would we fail
fare in the CCMRs because they are not Texas state schools? Or better yet, if they got into the better university, the University of Oklahoma, how would we fare in that score?
Oddly enough, actually attending college in those scores, in the accountability system, doesn't count as a factor. It's really just how you do on the prep test. On the TAPR, where we're reported out for our percent of kids that attend higher education, anybody who attends school out of state is not included in that measure.
So that would be a 0.
Oh, yes, on the TAPR.
On the taper.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to point that out. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Fitzhugh. Moving on, it's our monthly technology report with Mr. Colbeck.
Thank you, Madam President. In Board Book, you have the report for date ending July 31. So if you recall from last month, we had multiple months trying to get on this new cadence of being essentially 2 months back. So we're on that cadence, and a couple pieces I want to point out on page 1. You'll see that some of the projects that we ended up purchasing and implementing over the summer has brought down that bond balance from the 2017 technology bond at 7%. Remaining also, as I've shared in the past, as our technology gets older, we're outspending basically our revenues. So if you look at on the bottom, our IFE revenues are $717,000, expenses $976. Now next month I'm expecting that to change because back to school forms are open and we're going to start seeing revenues come in. So you'll have some insight into that next month. On the device category under page 1, if you look back a month prior, you'll see that the ages actually have gone down slightly, but most of that is because of us retiring some of the older technology and putting in some newer stuff that the board approved in June. And then also with the shared technology where we retired some of the old carts, that impacted that number. On page 2, really not a lot to point out. Obviously, we're in the summer month there. Summer school's ended, so you'll notice really almost no school access, but there is significant at-home access. And I'll also point out in the middle where you actually see the trend year over year. We actually have a bullet in there now for the month of July. So next month we'll start actually seeing trend line. So the month of July was slightly higher even than 22-23 school year. So that trend line will start moving each month. And then additionally, the devices are being used at home. And on a positive note, like I've shared before, when the devices are being used, they're filtered back, they're tunneled back here. And a lot of the resources that they are accessing is still considered educational by our filtering category. So that's a positive as well. So that concludes the technology report for the month of September.
Are there any questions? All right, moving on. The Enterprise Resource Planning Project update. Mr. Colbeck.
All right, thank you. As you know, we've talked about this project a few times in the past with the board, and the project is underway. And as I've shared in the past, this is a project that's going to take a long time to implement. And what you see here are what we're kind of classifying as our project phases. So you'll see above the white line in green, we are in pre-implementation phase. And I'll get into more details in that in a minute, but essentially the project kicked off in August. We are planning this pre-implementation phase up through February. And the color's maybe not the best choice. I try to put it in there as like yellow, kind of cautionary. Those are projected dates, and really if we can hit February as a recommendation for the actual ERP software, those dates could change depending on which vendor selected, the input we get from them, the involvement of the implementation. But just looking at the dates that we have lined out, I'll give you a little background on why we're looking at it this way. So if you look at the implementation phase going from February of 24 really into January of 2025, we're really trying to get prepared for that pre-launch. So there'd be obviously a lot of training going on. We're doing data migrations. We're validating data during that time. And if you see in February, we're trying to target February of 2025, we're targeting a go live. And the reason is, as we've talked to our different functional teams, one, there's never a good date ever for this, I'll point out, but two, there is a merge lane when you look at budget development. So as we go through our budget development cycle, that's a really good timeline where we could actually start building the budget and the projections in the new system. And then also from an HR perspective, HR, this is before your peak hiring. So you want people comfortable with those systems. You want them to be able to, be efficient once we get into that process. So we see that as a really great opportunity, and that's really what we're targeting. And then ultimately, once you select an ERP vendor, and we do have a vendor selected for project management and consulting services, at some point you're going to have to, transition all the support off of the vendor, off of that consulting firm onto us. So we kind of see that post-launch phase out into June where we're trying to become self-sustaining, so to speak. So that's kind of the layout for how we see the project coming together. Again, those dates could change. Is we focus on the pre-implementation phase. So iSphere was the vendor that was selected. We had our project kickoff meeting with our cross-functional teams on August 4th. And since then, they've been really doing discovery meetings, meeting with each department. So as you can imagine, we're breaking this down by work. So those discovery meetings are like accounts receivable, general ledger, payroll, accounts payable, HR. Really, even from an HR, breaking that into onboarding and budget projections, been meeting with PEEMs. So what we're doing is really discovering how we do work and what are our current processes. So the team is going through and process mapping how we're doing work, and then also we're trying to lean on the expertise of having a consultant firm like iSphere to tell us, in their review of how we're doing some of the work, give us recommendations on how to do it better. How can we be more efficient? Where are we inefficient? And in that same process, we're also developing requirements for the future RFP for the software itself. So that's a very involved process, just a lot of meetings. I just want to, I guess everybody that's in here that's been in those meetings, thank you, because I know it takes a ton of time. But ultimately, it's really important work because we see that as helping us be aligned to what solutions we end up putting in place. We've also worked with procurement contracts to release a request for information, an RFI, which that closed last week. And let me go back one more. And the reason we did that, too, by the way, is this is a pretty aggressive timeline. So what we're trying to do in the process of doing the RFIs, we're trying to learn what's out on the market, but also kind of putting the market on awareness that, hey, we're looking at doing something here, so be ready to support us in that RFP process. So we need to review the RFI responses. We're in the process of even early drafting the RFP requirements, and obviously as we're doing that, there's more deeper dive meetings going on as we business map those different processes. We meet with group teams. We're basically taking that documentation and sending it back to the teams and say, this is what we heard. Is this really how you do this? And we're getting some feedback to make some changes in that. And then ultimately, as I've said before, these systems are massive, right? And you end up in a situation where you might not find one system that's going to do everything. We want to find something that does the most to the best that it can. We're going to have to prioritize some of the functionality. So how we see that working out is basically prioritizing our requirements in our RFP at the leadership team level so that when we get to the point where we can evaluate the RFPs, there's some consensus there and some synergy on how we're going to score that. And then what we're targeting right now is the release of the actual RFP would be Friday, October 13th. So we're trying to pull all the components of the RFP in, and then obviously as vendors are responding to that, we'll be working through that prioritization process. Ultimately, we're going to have to complete the review of those submittals. That's going to include meeting with vendors, very likely doing site visits for our top solutions that we want to look at and take a deeper dive. But ultimately, our goal is to bring a recommendation to the board in February. So that, again, that's a pretty aggressive timeline. And then as far as board updates, The plan on this, recognizing February is kind of that timeline for the board to make a decision. In December, our plan is to bring an information item back to the board to give another update on the project. In January, there is no work session, but during the board meeting, we'd have a discussion around where we are in the RFP process. Are we still on track for February? And then ultimately, if we are on track, we would bring a recommendation to the board in February for the actual ERP software itself. So with that, before we and I was really looking to also get some feedback from the board in how would you like to continue to get updates on this project. It is a big project. I mean, I think we have a couple different options. I can include some of this stuff in board notes. Really, from now till December, there's 2 months in there. If you want us to bring information back to the board in October and November, we certainly can do that. I just want to get some feedback from the board. So that's all the information I have, and any questions?
Anybody want to give Mr. Goldbeck any feedback? Ms. Sells.
I'm okay with it being in notes as long as we have the option to ask questions and receive answers.
Sure.
And
absolutely.
If we could
A
maneuver
special
that.
section.
Yeah.
I was going to say song and dance, but
Okay.
Dr. Bonner.
I would agree with the notes idea. I like tonight's quick hits, right, and the project timeline. So moving forward, whenever it comes back to the board for public consumption, I'd use that slide and then give the hits on where we're at in the process.
Okay.
This is incredibly important. $10 million ultimately in district expenditure, and the lifeblood of the student information system and the human resources and the finance system. So it's incredibly important. And it's, so anyway, that's enough. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? Thank you very much, Mr. Goldbeck.
Okay.
I think board notes is the consensus, as long as we can then forward you any questions
Sure.
that we have, and we'll share those questions with other board members.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Moving on to discussion items, monthly financial report, including the bond report, land sale report, and the monthly investment summary. Ms. Maloney.
Thank you, President Prosnick, Dr. Rapp, members of the board. We are bringing the monthly financials ending July 31st, 2023. We have one more month in the fiscal year. And looking at revenue, for local revenue, I believe we'll collect a little bit more in taxes, but we came very close in local revenue. The biggest shortfall there is going to be on the property taxes, and we had some investments make up for that. In state revenue, we have received pretty much all of our state revenue, with the exception of about $6 million in the TRS on behalf. That's a wash. We'll save that on the expenditure side as well. And then we still have a shortfall in the federal revenue, but we did get good news from SHARS this month, and so you'll see reflected next month the $2 million will be coming in for that. So we're pleased to see that. On the expenditure side, I will remind you that we have a $60 million recapture payment that was made in August. That'll be reflected next month in the financials, and we have one more month of payroll. And with the accrual, that'll be somewhere between 35 and 36 million. Now, a little bit different from what you saw when we see August financials, you're going to see a pretty ugly picture because we're not starting our reclass of the ESSER funds or the land sale proceeds until September. So we'll update you in the weekly update ahead of time because we had done the reclass in July, and we realized after working with Whitley Penn that it's better to do that after the year closes. So that'll be a little bit different than what we saw last year. In the Child Nutrition Fund, you can see with one more month with the revenue there, and we'll have more than that in the expenditures, that there will be the need for that spend down plan that we've talked about many, many times. In the Debt Service Fund, this is before the August payment, so in next month's financials, you'll see that we made our August payment. It will reflect that. On page 197, with all the federal funds, I always bring you all the way down to the middle for Fund 282, ESSER 3. We did the last drawdown on that this morning. It is out the door. It is gone. It is over. And that was a big celebration to get that accomplished. Thank you to Ms. Hart. She's not here anymore. And to the finance team for all the work on that. In the construction account, it's good to see the interest coming in. We're going to see a little more coming in very, very soon. Thank you to Amber's team for looking into that and making that happen. And in the land sale report, if we reclassify some of the expenditures to the general fund, you'll see that in the November financials, as we are going to be doing that in September. For investments, golly, those yields are high. We're starting to dwindle down as we move into the fall, and we'll start collecting property taxes again in December, but we're still continuing to see those good returns on our investments, even though we'll start to see our portfolio go down. And so with that, that is the monthly financials for July.
Are there any questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Maloney. Next, the 88th Legislative Session update, Dr. Rapp.
Thank you, Madam President. Board, I do want to continue to provide legislative updates. I realize the 88th session is concluded, but I think it's important that we spend a few minutes just recapping some information from the session and in anticipation of a possible October special session ahead. Of course, we provided, as a team, public comment for the House Select Committee. But I do plan on continuing to send our elected officials legislative newsletters. So we'll send one of those out this week. That's pretty much the cadence we use during the session, is when our community and staff newsletters went out, we sent one to the legislature as well. So I wanted to update you all about some key messages that I will be putting in that communication to them. So one of the things that we want to do while they're home for the interim is really invite their feedback about what they would like to visit and learn more about in our schools. We'd like to customize those individual visits for our delegation, and we look forward to spending time with them as they continue to engage with us. And then offering to hold a School Finance 101 session for their district directors. Again, they're home from the interim for right now, and their district directors we think would appreciate, and we would welcome them learning more about school finance. Then some other key messages that I'll be updating them on are basically in response to what we hear about in the news about what's been invested in public education. So we hear about the $18 billion that has been invested for property tax compression, and we all appreciate the property tax compression, and we appreciate that the commitment to holding school districts harmless in providing the funding that we'll be not having as a result of that compression. However, without there being any change in the basic allotment, which is that formula education funding, we really aren't seeing any additional money come to the district. And we've talked about that for a while, and I'll just continue to hit that message with our elected officials. There was an investment of $589 million to mitigate health insurance premiums. This did keep premium increases less than what was projected for staff. We know that premiums will continue to increase year over year, but unfortunately, without an increase of the basic allotment, there's not that funding to address the cost of teacher pay, which is one of the key components for our staff addressing rising healthcare costs. You as a board provided raises to our staff, and we heard a thank you from Dr. Hart for that, and we continue to hear thank yous from the staff for that, but there was no help to you all from that from the legislative session. They did put aside $3.2 billion for funding for new enrollment growth in public schools in the state, and this is critical for holding us harmless for the same level of funding in case of statewide enrollment growth. They did invest $2.4 billion towards the golden penny yield. Of course, we have 5 of those golden pennies. The $1.4 billion put towards school safety we've talked about, and I will continue to emphasize, does not cover the cost of adding the armed personnel to each campus. That will cost us $3 million. We received $1.5 million. And I always say, really, you're looking at $6 million total when you consider our SROs that we pay for, many of whom we saw here this evening. And then we talked about, I will continue to share with them the impact of inflation on our costs, from teacher raises to bus fuel, electricity costs, insurance premiums. And so while they did put more money into IMA, into the technology and instructional materials allotment funding, really it would have been better to flow that money into the basic allotment. I shared this information with you all in May, and I'm going to be reinforcing this again with them as feedback, that when I studied the fiscal notes for House Bill 1605 and House Bill 3, it does say in there that TEA could add up to over 100 positions for those two pieces of legislation alone. We have reduced 15% of our central office budgets, and currently we spend less than 3% of our budget on administration. And one of the things that my business advisory committee talks to me about is really how commendable that is, to spend less than 3% on administration of the business. And when you look at McKinsey & Company, a recent chart that they had out, they say top performers in each industry are noted as having general and administrative cost somewhere between 4 to 8%. And we are less than 3%. They don't have an industry benchmark for education. House Bill 3033, which Ms. Bay has updated you all on, is related to public information, and it only permits governmental entities to designate up to 10 non-business days each calendar year. And so Ms. Bay has been working on that. In our 2023 calendar year, designating those those 10 non-business days will be available on our website for public view. And then you heard from Dr. Fitzhugh tonight about the continued concerns and feedback we have on state accountability, and we will, as a team of 8, be signing a letter and providing that to the commissioner and our elected officials about feedback on the accountability measures. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Maloney for some things related to school finance.
Just a couple of things that are circulating in the school finance world in regards to the legislature. For the first of all, property tax compression, and what did that effect have on Senate Bill 2? Property tax compression has been a legislative tool in strong economic times. There's a 20-year pattern of property value growth in Texas, and it's really off the charts. So we need to look at the patterns from the past, because that can usually predict the future. And I always say what's past is prologue. It is very likely by the time we get to the next session that the Tier 1 M&O tax rate will continue to be compressed. That would be the MCR. And golly, my clicker is crazy. So this shows the tax base over it took 20 years from 83 to 2002 to get to $1 trillion. And just from 2002 to the present, it went another 2, and we're looking to go to $4 trillion in the next couple of years. And so that just shows you how quickly in the state of Texas that property values are going up. So leading up to the 88th session, the map on the left is tax year 21. That would be the first year of the biennium, the last biennium at 6% growth, and then the last year of the biennium at 19% growth. So this phenomenon increased recapture around the state and helped fuel the $5.3 billion of the maximum compressed tax rate ceiling reduction that occurred as a part of the 88th regular session. The $5.3 billion was before they even passed Senate Bill 2. That was already going to happen in the formula. So when we get up to the next session, we're going to see that same thing again if this growth continues without any legislation. So I think these maps are illustrative of that. Now, this next map is after Senate Bill 2 in the 88th. You can see the map on the left. We had to set our MCRs based on the 40K, but you can see, and that statewide growth was about 14.7%. But when they did the $100,000 100K exemption, it took $300 billion off the tax rolls, so that only showed 6.3% growth. And so you can see you got to look. That's how that got bought down. And then on this slide, it's despite the legislature's infusion of $12.3 billion as part of Senate Bill 2. So that's the 5 plus the 12 to get to there, and some change to get to the 18 as a part of Senate Bill 2. To compress taxes by an additional 10 cents. This clustering of school district tax rates at the MCR floor continues to be an issue. There's more than 500 districts at the floor of 6192. That's where we are. But just last year there were 701 at 80 cents, and now there's over 500 at 61 cents. So that it's just telling you what's going on with taxes and what we're going to see in the future. We already know that $4 billion is already appropriated for public education in the appropriations bill. It is contingent on the special session, as Dr. Rapp mentioned. There will be likely consideration of pay increases. What we've heard in the finance world is a kitchen approach to school finance, but what we need to do is advocate for putting it all in the basic allotment. And then, of course, we know that many of these things could be tied to school choice. I like the Equity Center analogy of the Titanic. The basic allotment is the foundation of our system. There's no automatic adjustment for inflation. So tying funding to student weights and some of those, the kitchen sink approach, formula specifics, is kind of like moving the deck chairs on the Titanic, because the hole in the hull needs to be addressed. That's the basic allotment. And we are not alone in what we're doing right now. I've listed out here just with a Google search of some of the VADERs that have been called across the state. And I just wonder, we haven't talked about this too much, but I want to say that our charter schools across the state receive the average of enrichment pennies. So our charter schools right now, we only have the 5 golden pennies, but the charter schools that are within our district boundaries benefit from the enrichment that is the average of the state, which is much higher than what ours is.
Any comments? Dr. Bonner.
Two quick things. One, with the 89th legislative session out there in the distant future, I'd like us to consider, and we've talked about this a little bit, Dr. Rapp and I have, about getting our legislative priorities out there earlier, way earlier. Just a little chicken scratch here on this piece of paper. If the legislative session starts in January of 2025 and goes to May, I'm going to propose that we get our legislative priorities out there in September of next year, 2024. And that would give us time to actually advocate, influence, and write so that when those individuals get serious with their staff about filing bills, et cetera, they have some in their back pocket. The Lewisville ISD has done a great job in the past on developing advocacy points. However, I think we need to take it a step further and start developing some legislation, some bills, and because we're all great writers. So I'm going to advocate for that. And then the second thing I'd like to mention is more just kind of a political rambling, and that is that the Tier 1 will continue to further be compressed, and we better hope that the state of Texas economy continues to generate great returns, because Governor Abbott has been very clear that he sides with the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and there's a great paper they wrote on buying it down to zero. Well, if you're going to buy that down to zero, that implies that the state is going to make up that difference. The only way that's going to happen is if we continue to have runaway growth. So that's not a pro or a con for that. It's just an alert out there to whomever's listening that is the intent of Governor Abbott. And so the challenge for school districts is going to be, as noted in the slides, an increased basic allotment. Our legislative partners have not raised that since 2019, which leaves us at the damaging influence of inflation. And so it's going to be imperative that message be heard by to the legislators moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bonner. Anybody else? All right, moving on. Action items. Consider approval of the district improvement plan. Dr. Miller.
All right, you received the final draft of the district improvement plan and board book, along with the scorecard is included in that, and then it included the timeline of your updates and your routines. So I don't have anything else unless you all have any questions.
Dr. Barker. Make a motion.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the board approve the 2023-24 district improvement plan as presented by administration.
Second, Ms. Alcatab. All those in favor? It's unanimous, 7-0. Consider adoption of a school funding resolution. Dr. Rapp.
All right, so we have been, of course, as we just all talked about, advocating for an increase in the basic allotment. We've been communicating with our elected officials about how important that is and other topics related to school funding. And in anticipation of a possible special session, we have worked on a resolution, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms.
Sells is going to read for us.
All right, so here we go.
Yes, and this resolution is, I'm sorry that Ms. Hassett's not here to appreciate all the whereases in this resolution. So here we go. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Lewisville Independent School District regarding school funding. Whereas the state of Texas has a historic $33 billion surplus, and whereas the state of Texas is required by the Texas Constitution to make suitable provision for an efficient system of free and public schools, and whereas Texas public schools districts accept every student and are mandated to follow state academic standards plus financial accountability, and whereas the Texas legislature has not made any adjustments to the basic allotment since 2019, and whereas local school districts are facing historic levels of inflation since the COVID-19 pandemic and would need a $900 increase in the basic allotment to address inflationary cost. And whereas local school districts are facing a statewide and nationwide teacher shortage requiring competitive compensation for teachers. And whereas House Bill 3 passed during the 88th legislative session requires the addition of armed personnel for all campuses without the sufficient funding necessary for local school districts to implement the provisions of this bill. And whereas the Texas Commission on Special Education indicated that special education is underfunded by $1.8 billion in the state of Texas, while the population of students served in special education is increasing. And whereas providing a voucher to families for special education services does not begin to address the reality that Texas school districts have never been fully funded to implement the requirements of IDEA. And whereas House Bill 1416 passed during the 88th legislative session is an unfunded mandate and federal ESSER dollars utilized to support high-quality tutoring programs for students are ending. And whereas the state of Texas has a funding gap for public education ranking 42nd out of 50 states on public education funding and is rated an F below the national average of a C on K through 12 spending. And whereas the average private school tuition in Texas is $10,585 per year, and providing taxpayer dollars to students to attend private schools will not help students who do not have transportation and cannot make up the difference between the education savings account and the private school tuition. And whereas per pupil spending in Texas should not be referred to with INS funding included because those funds are bond funds approved by local voters and cannot be used to address everyday operating expenses that are impacted by inflation. And whereas the Lewisville Independent School District is facing a $48 million deficit to sustain competitive pay increases for staff and maintain student instructional programs of choice, extracurriculars. Now therefore be it resolved that, 1, should a legislative special session related to educational choice and educational savings accounts / vouchers be called, the Lewisville ISD Board of Trustees call on the legislature to support an increase to the basic allotment and address the unfunded mandates placed on Texas public schools, therefore rejecting diversion of taxpayer dollars to private entities who are not required to comply with Texas Education Code, ensuring transparency and accountability, passed, approved, and adopted, will be passed and approved and adopted by the Board of Trustees of the Lewisville Independent School District on this 11th day of September 2023, and will be signed by Jenny Prosnick, LISD Board of Trustees President, who is a citizen of HD 106 and SD 30, Catherine Sells, LISD Board of Trustees Secretary, who is a resident of HD 65 and SD 12, Sheila P. Taylor, LISD Board of Trustees Place 3, who is a resident of HD 57 and that is Senate District 12, Dr. Stacy Barker, LISD Board of Trustees Place 7, House District 63 and Senate District 12, Dr. Buddy Bonner, LISD Board of Trustees Vice President, House District 63, State District 12, Allison Lasan, LISD Board of Trustees Place 2, House District 57 and State District 12, and Michelle Alcatib, LISD Board of Trustees Place 6, House District 65, State District 12.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion?
I'll make, go ahead, I'll make it. Let Ms. Taylor and I'll second.
Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the board adopt the school funding resolution as recommended by administration.
Second, Ms. Sells. All those in favor? It passes unanimously 7-0. If there is no further business, the meeting is adjourned. The time is 8:32 p.m. Have a pleasant evening.